Hey guys, this is MTG Degree. My name is Luke, and today we're going to talk about mistakes. Mistakes make you feel bad. Mistakes make you feel stupid. I know I feel stupid when I make a mistake, so let's try to not make a mistake ever again. So when I point out these mistakes, they're not just for you. They're for me too. They're for everybody. We all make mistakes. Don't feel too bad about it. This really does bring us to our first mistake, which is thinking that you don't make mistakes. So, an example is, I had this guy who commented on one of my videos, 7 ways to stop missing your triggers, right? And he commented, if you miss your triggers, you should quit playing Magic. I never miss my triggers. And you know what? Everyone makes mistakes. Pros make mistakes. So the first mistake is thinking that you're playing flawlessly. You're probably not. Additionally, if you look for that comment, it's not there. I can count the amount of things that I've deleted on one hand, and his comment is one of them, because don't tell people that they can't play Magic on my channel. It's not cool. Okay, so next mistake is take care of yourself. You know, you're going to a big tournament, 9 rounds, 10 rounds, whatever. Take care of yourself, drink the water, get the sleep you need, all that kind of thing. I know you guys know how to take care of yourself, so I'm not even going to tell you how. Just, you know, keep yourself in good shape, and then your mind will be there and won't make mistakes. Okay, well, you might have noticed that we haven't even talked about playing the game yet, and that's fine. These are before the game even starts mistakes. And so the next one is about deck building. So if you're playing a homebrew, let me tell you what the first biggest problem people have when they play homebrews, which is that when they homebrew, they don't put in enough lands. Just put in the lands that you need to win the game. This is really a big deal. It sounds silly, but people just don't put in enough lands. Just put in the lands. You need lands. The second deck building mistake people make is the sideboard, and thinking that it's a lot more static than it is. Remember that your sideboard is there to help you fight the good fight against your current meta. And your current meta is changing all the time. So, I guess just take a look around, see what people are playing, see if your sideboard can change. Sometimes your sideboard doesn't need to change, but, you know, just because something's in a deck list doesn't mean that it's the deck list for you, your meta, and the time that you're playing. Okay, so the next mistake people make is honestly unavoidable to the vast majority of Magic players. Why? Because it's so darn expensive. Magic is way too expensive. But if you have the money to throw at it, an important thing to choose is your deck choice. Sometimes your deck just isn't good in the meta, and you just need a different deck. If you've got the money, the resources, then go ahead and just buy your next deck, or you already have the next deck, or whatever. But think about what deck you're playing in your meta, and that's important. An example is I have a Turbo Mill Modern deck. Is Turbo Mill good in Modern? No, because you could just be playing Burn, which would be more efficient. But I love Turbo Mill, so I am conscientiously making this mistake on purpose. The last mistake that you can make before you even sit down to a game of Magic is opponent choice. So this one's kind of a heart-wrencher for many of us, and I personally don't have the fortitude to change. But here's the concept. Let's say that you're the top dog at your LGS, the big cheese, right? Well, maybe that's a problem. To get better at Magic, you have to play against people that are better than you. So if you live in a fairly big city, or you're close to several LGSs, you should probably go to several of them and choose the one with the toughest opponents. That's where you're gonna get good. Personally, I play at an LGS that's really fun and enjoyable. The people there are very nice. But all the spikes go to a different LGS. And so I would become a better player, most likely, if I just played with those people who are really trying to get there in the Magic world. So yeah, you might even sacrifice your enjoyment for better opponents. And I know that sounds crazy, but this is a pretty spiky video. We're talking about how to be a pro thinker into Magic. Okay, so let's talk about mistakes that you can actually make while you're in the game. So the first one is a mulligan mistake. Some of us mulligan a little too aggressively, some hands that'll probably get there. Some of us mulligan way too loosely, that just never mulligan. And that's a problem too. Remember, a hand of 6 that's actually got a plan is almost certainly better than a hand of 7 that doesn't really and needs several draws to get there. So my suggestion is just try mulliganing the opposite way that you normally do for a little while. See how your change in mulligan decisions changes your win percentage. Okay, so the next set of mistakes is one that frankly runs rampant in the Magic community. I'm guilty of it, you're probably guilty of it, everyone's guilty of it, and that is mana tapping mistakes. And basically the way that this can be solved is by just playing a little slower. When you tap your mana, think about it really critically. What do I want to cast next? Am I going to stop myself from casting it if I leave up such and such? And another thing to think of is, even if you can pay for your one spell several different ways, and it's the only spell that you're going to cast, what mana can I leave up? If I leave it up, is it really significant? Like, leaving up blue in most formats really means something. People might be scared of a counterspell. Or leaving up white in Modern, people might think, Path to Exile, ooh, scary. So make sure that you are tapping in such a way that you get your spells out, all the spells that you want to cast, and you're scaring your opponent just with what you leave up, even if you can't use it. As a side note, mana tapping mistakes are the ones that make me angry at myself the most, because they're so easy to fix. All you have to do is tap the mana that's clearly there in the first place. So if you find yourself making these mistakes, just slow down. We should all probably just slow down a little bit when we consider casting our spells. Our next mistake is one that kind of lies within our inborn tendencies, which is a role comprehension mistake. People who think, I'm a blue mage, tend to not attack sometimes when they can sneak in damage, because aggro just isn't on the brain. Or people that are a little too aggro and then end up losing because they should have had a defender. Think about who you are as a Magic player, and then think about where your tendencies lie. This will help you decide, should I maybe be a little bit more aggro than I tend to be? I'm kind of winning right here. Or maybe this aggro plan isn't working out. I just need to hold back this defender. Understanding your role in a game is really quite deep and complex and deserves its own video. But for now, just think about it when you play. Who am I, and what is the board state? Okay, so our next mistake has to do with combat and mistakes in attacking and blocking. And so I've pulled out 3 very common mistakes that I'd like to highlight. The first one is an excessive fear of combat tricks. Let's be very honest with ourselves. A combat trick costs your opponent a card. And because it's called a trick, I think some people think to themselves, oh, I got fooled because my creature died to this trick. But most of the time, if you block a profitable block and they trick, then it's a 1-for-1 exchange and you took no damage. So it's not that big of a deal. If your creature isn't very precious to you, consider blocking more. Okay, so next let's talk about taking damage. A sign of a very beginning player is that they hate to take damage. They just never want to take damage, and damage is a problem. And then they level up, and they realize that they don't lose until they're at 0 health. It doesn't matter what health they are at. They just can win at 1 health. It's great. So I'm going to take this damage, keep my resources, etc., etc. And that's a great level up moment, and a big one for a Magic player. But it's very common for us to take this too far. And then we say, oh, I'll take the damage. Take the damage. I'll just take the damage, it's no problem. I'll just take the damage. But sometimes you need to sit back and say, how much damage can I really take? Maybe this is too much. And we start to not block excessively because we think that it's this great level up moment. There's a balance between the two. And I guess reconsider your blocks. Can I really take this extra damage? It's very game-to-game decision-making, but it's something that we should all think about a little more. Okay, so our last mistake in this combat damage phase thing is to consider our attackers and blockers. And this one's really key, which is when you have a creature that you have no intention of blocking with and can attack no problem, oftentimes people will not attack with these creatures. So for example, Scrapskin Drake. This thing should just be attacking almost constantly. It could never block. But consider another flyer. Let's say Charging Griffin. Are you really going to block with it? If you don't have an intention of blocking with it, you should probably be attacking. I've seen a lot of players give up this free damage, especially in limited games, because they're not sure whether or not that creature is an attacking or blocking creature to them. If you consider those creatures in your mind and say, this is an attacker, this is a blocker, really think about what your plan is for the next turn, how you want to do combat, that will help you a lot. Okay, so next let's talk about mistakes after the game. So one of the most common mistakes after the game is to blame the mistakes on something else. Bad draws, lucky opponents, this kind of thing. And this will really prevent you from becoming a better player. It will prevent anyone from becoming a better player. Owning up to your mistakes, feeling them deep, is a big part of becoming better. You can tell your bad beat stories, and that's fine, but just remember that your mistakes might have also been a part of the game, and so don't just blame them on other things. Additionally, let's talk about something else, which is that some people take the philosophy that I outlined there and take it way too deep. Don't think that everything is your fault. Sometimes it's really not, and there wasn't anything that you can do, and so don't feel bad about it. Don't consider it a mistake. So for an example, you're in a good position, you use a combat trick to kill a creature, and you're doing the damage, and then someone plays the biggest fatty, and you just can't attack anymore. And it's a big problem for you. And you say, oh man, if I had that combat trick, it would have been great. I would have been able to use it. But now you've got nothing, and you've drawn land for 5 turns in a row. Well, that's not your fault. You drew land for 5 turns in a row. That's very unlucky. So basically what I'm trying to say with the last 2 points is that Magic has a chance element. And it's really important to decide whether or not it was a chance or your mistakes that were causing the problem. There's really a balance there. And I guess just keep it in mind as you try to improve. Now let's be honest, I'm not perfect. I probably haven't thought of all the mistakes that can be made in a Magic game. Things that you think are important to keep an eye on. If you think there's something I haven't mentioned, go ahead and throw it down in the comments. People are here to learn cool and new things, and so the comment section is a great place to do that. Throw it down there. Of course, I'm a YouTuber. Subscribes, likes, they help me out. Go ahead and do that if it feels right to you. This has been MTG Degree. My name is Luke, and I'll see you next video.